This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
In a world of capes and lunatics, gods and monsters, there exists a team, a group of men and women, humans and inhumans, aliens, time travelers, and robots. They are the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they are here to protect you. Enough said. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to Nuff Said, the Southgate Media Group's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast. Tonight's episode, Season 7, Episode 2, Know Your Onions. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esther, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Welcome back, Mozz. Okay, tonight's episode. With the identity of the time-unraveling threat revealed, the team's mission to protect him at all costs leads each agent to question their own values. Our director this week is Eric Lanouvelle, Jack Kirby, and they're not giving Stan Lee a credit on this one? Ooh, that's pretty rough there on their part. Jack Kirby gets the based on Marvel Comics by credit. Hey, IMDb, they're getting political here. Stan Lee helped too. Okay, so I'm going to give him the credit, even if IMDb will not. Joss Whedon, Jed Whedon, and Marissa Tancheron get our created bys on this. Our written by this week is by Craig Titley. Mark Leitner is just a regular story editor, but standing above him with Nobel Oblige is George Kitson, our executive story editor this week. Okay.
Wasn't he named after that famous planet where you can go gamble on stuff?
I mean, what stays on Kitson, what happens on Kitson stays on Kitson, and that's all you need to know. Okay. Man. Okay, so for those who don't remember last episode, so one of the things I love about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is I will build up a really ornate fan theory that, to me, is really cool and really great. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. will ignore it, come up with their own idea, which winds up being better. So for those who don't remember last week, my whole theory was, there's going to be this entire emotional arc between Coulson and May, where, Coulson's going to have to say, look, I know I look like Coulson, but I'm not Coulson. I'm this other thing, but I'm still something. And it's going to be that whole trying to find a way. They just said, nope. Because instead they did the opposite, which is that May comes back, and May is just data. And
is that what's happening?
I mean, that's my take on it. My basic, and they may completely throw me a left curve on this too. My basic take on this is they brought May back after she was dead, and all of May's knowledge is there, but her soul is shuffled off the mortal coil. So basically, she is essentially a revenant. She is everything that May once was, but is no longer the spirit of May. So she is essentially the cold, emotionless robot now.
She's basically kind of what Sarge was.
Essentially, yeah.
Huh.
She even makes a point. She sees Coulson, she says, "You're not Sarge, and you're not Coulson." And she's like, okay. It was just like, okay, what are the new data points? And I'm wondering.
I don't know if if it was just Data, would she have emotional reactions to things? She seems to get angry really quickly. And when she walks away after saying, "You're not Coulson either," and he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "Yeah, he's still dead." Like, she seems like she felt some sort of way about it. Like, she was like upset that he was still dead, or like somebody had, caused her a great affront or something.
I mean, that's one way to see it. And I'm not going to deny that that's not a valid way to see it. My take on it is literally just that, essentially, like she says, they're on a mission. I go on missions to protect them. Why am I here? It's literally an if-then statement. So in her brain, there is an if-then. If the team is in danger, then go to line, kill a bunch of people. It is a purely practical progression of the story. And so my thought on this, and this is sort of where I think, because there's so many things going on in this episode. And one of the things, because we get the reveal in this episode that, there is a clock. Meaning that you have to travel between certain time holes. And that specifically, they both do. Because, and this is of course the important point, is this is the method of time travel developed by Fitz and Simmons. So the limitations that Fitz and Simmons found are the limitations that they have found. Because, and this I think is what is interesting when you think about it from an engineering standpoint. So when you look at Age of Ultron, they weren't worrying about the time stream. They were worrying about not Age of Ultron, Endgame. They weren't worrying about the time stream. They were worried about stepping back in time, getting something and bringing it back forward in time. They weren't worried about what was going to happen to that time stream. They were worried about bringing things forward to their future time stream. In this case, it's the exact opposite. They want to go back in time, but they need to maintain the time stream in such a way that what occurs at the end of the story is not dramatically different than what they left. So here you have people trying to preserve a time stream. So within that concept, what becomes the big conflict here, they certainly could have killed Wilfred Malik and saved thousands of lives. But in doing so, they don't prevent all of the lives that were lost. They only create an alternate universe in which they were not. And possibly, as suggested, a universe in which something even worse arises. It's the idea that, I think Quake makes an interesting point, and I was glad somebody finally brought it up. Like, we have the chance to save all these lives. We should take it. And when he said, but S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't exist, and she says, well, maybe S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't need to. Are we only doing this out of a nostalgic allegiance to our own history, or to the narrative that we had already known, the history we had already known, or even more so to ourselves? Do we have an egotistical thing that's saying that S.H.I.E.L.D. should exist? We should be the protectors. You don't think that if S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist, something else wouldn't? You don't think that's a natural order of the universe, that as people gather, some people become protectors, some people become the evil ones, that something else would have taken its place? It's a logical argument to make. If we have a chance to prevent death, we can't be a party to it simply because we wish that our power or our position would be preserved. Well, and so actually what they have Coulson say here is actually a line from a Fantastic Four comic back in the 80s, where essentially after a fight with Annihilus, everyone thinks Reed Richards is dead and Nick Fury, Johnny Storm, She-Hulk, and Sue Storm are flying back to Earth from S.H.I.E.L.D. And when they arrive on Earth, it's 1938. And Nick Fury makes this point. He's like, I'd really like to go and shoot Hitler right now if we could.
Mm.
And this becomes this whole idea of having to go shoot Hitler. And, Fury makes this point. It's like, so what? We just have to let all of them die? And it's
Right.
like, but what Sue says is, it's not that we have to let them die, it's that they already have. And
I know, but not
well,
necessarily is the whole reason we're there.
the whole thing, actually the whole reason they're there is to preserve the time stream. So, and that's the thing. It's like, if you just wanted to go back in time and mess stuff up, you could just, I'm sure Fitz could have figured out Pym particles too, and just gone to a point in history, done something, and altered time. But that's
I feel like,
not
don't they imply that he kind of did, and that's how he got so rich and got all his inventions and whatnot?
We don't know. Well, so that's a whole other thing with Fitz and Simmons and how long they were separated.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems kind of plausible.
I mean, it's plausible, but even in that, so the idea is that since the time travel was created by the chromatons, they wanted to find a time travel that would let them go back and accomplish something.
Hmm.
So from the chronotons' point of view, so they could go back and they could just start shooting people, and they could all go back in time like Thanos did or in that case forward in time, and just start murdering a lot of people. That would be their ability to destroy things if that was what they wanted. But that is not what they chose to do. What they want to do is they want to create a situation in which the world in which they're attacking the Earth is more vulnerable, but also one in which things haven't, in which their past and future are preserved. So if you just want to create a divergent timeline, you could do that, but then the chronotons are off doing their thing in the timeline they're in.
Mm.
So if you have an enemy that is trying to preserve the timeline, just breaking the timeline doesn't solve that problem. And I do wonder if this is sort of the thing when we get to that Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers question, if this is going to come into an issue. Because within it is this idea that there is a closed loop of time that says we went back in time and all the world required me to go back in time. So that in essence, the agent's going back in time now, and Enoch interacting with Koenig isn't going to disrupt the timeline because they're just going to be there. And because they're there, that's actually going to influence the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D. So that essentially they were always meant to go back in time. They were always meant to create this story that happens.
I think something that points to that for me was that moment where Freddy says to them, he's like, well, they're going to shoot you at the end. And he goes, then why would they shoot me? Only if I did something stupid. And it makes me think, yeah, that's what you're forcing him to do, is to do something stupid right now. And that's probably the reason why he's going to get shot. So wait a second. Were you meant to be here all along? Had you already been here all along in the same way that all those people have already died? Right now?
Well, when you think about it, he gets the one vial of the serum. Now, when the woman gives him the cigarette holder with it, there's like 4 vials in there. That only 1 vial is left is kind of telling, and also suggests that if this is the super soldier serum that was used to create Johann Schmidt, because remember, this is a decade before Steve Rogers comes. This is a decade even This is even like before the Nazi Party actually gets formed.
Right.
1931. This is still, if I recall correctly, this is still, the Weimar government. This is still, it's the latter days of Berlin, but it's still, that carefree Berlin that the Nazis were reacting against. I could be wrong on my exact dates, but I want to say that the Nazis really didn't fully rise to power until later in the 30s.
It had to be, at least, right?
Yeah. World War II starts sometime around 1936.
40. Oh, does it? Huh.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got into it in 1941, but we were late to the game.
That's true.
That's the thing. Yeah, I want to say that they first start reuniting Austria. I want to say it's in the mid-30s. So, maybe it's close enough, but it seems like it's suggesting that Hydra, as has been the case, Hydra way predates the Nazis.
Right.
That Hydra isn't the Nazis. Hydra is a much older organization. Now, we may even get into this, the idea that S.H.I.E.L.D. is a much older organization, too, which is something they did in the comics, where they decided that basically there is the S.H.I.E.L.D., which was this early Egyptian group that fought off the Brood in ancient Egypt. And that was the first Brotherhood of the Shield. And then in the distant future, Sir Isaac Newton, who becomes, who is basically the villain of the piece, forms Hydra as an offshoot of S.H.I.E.L.D.
What?
Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
Why?
Well, because he's Sir Isaac Newton and he is evil.
Oh, boy. Wow.
Yeah, that's the great thing about historical characters. You can decide some are evil and some are good. That's why Tesla gets to be a good guy in that story, Even though, arguably, Edison is the guy actually supporting democracy in the whole story. So,
Well, those are two separate things. Who was more efficient and who was more moral, I guess.
Well, yeah.
So, and those are, fair questions.
Yeah, however the story goes. But anyway, but that's the fun of comic books is, they get to pick heroes in it. And yeah, Isaac Newton unfortunately got cast as the bad guy. Benjamin Franklin
was he a good bad guy?
He was good at his bad guy.
Was he at least good at his job? Is he good at what he did? Okay, good. At least they gave
Hydra. How bad could it be if you found Hydra,
Great.
And basically it's this idea, and it comes into this idea about what the force of the learned should be. Should we simply keep mankind from destroying itself, or should we actually take that active role and tell them what to do? And
those are some big questions.
Yeah, well, but that's the big question. That's the big question in everything is, do we trust humanity to find its own way, or do we step up and say, okay, let me tell you how to solve this problem. And speaking of solving problems, this is what we have here. Is we have our heroes back in time, to one extent or another, creating problems. Did I start the recording on this? Yeah, we did start the recording. Just wanted to make I just wait. Did I start the recording? Yeah,
that would have been funny for a minute.
Yes. We are recording. No problem. Phil won't be mad. Just edit this part out, Phil. It's fine.
Right.
Phil has to listen to the whole thing.
The only genuine argument I can find against not killing Freddy is that as big as a role he takes in the future, right now he's just one of many cogs that can take that role. So if you kill him, next Tuesday they'll get another cog to deliver it, and that guy will leverage his situation to turn it itself into an empire of evil. So you can't really change the past at all. You think you can, but perhaps you can't at all.
Well, there's an aspect to this story that I always like to think about, which is this idea. If you don't have the Nazis, do you have the rise of civil rights in the second half of the 20th century? The idea is that in fighting the Nazis, you had such a pure evil based on racist ideas that all of a sudden everybody in America and Europe could start to see where their leaders were essentially sounding like Nazis.
Right, and it became sort of like a fable or a parable, but not a metaphor. It was very, very real.
Well, exactly.
And so, worst case scenarios right in front of you, and you can apply that sort of logic to any situation you're in and realize how bad it could get, and it gives you sort of like this emotional bouncing off point to say, oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's not a good idea, because look how bad it can really get.
Well, exactly. And, you think about, so as an example, people contemporaneously criticized Churchill as he was trying to maintain the empire after the war. That, they said, you sound a heck of a lot like that guy you just told us to kick the butt of. About, the purity of the British race and this and the other. And when you think about the people who make up America, the Irish and the Slavs and the Germans and all these people who do know their fair share of oppression under caste systems and the like, and class systems in America, when they find themselves, being asked to support people who are fighting the exact same fight that, they just stomped on, suddenly people say, well, you know what, maybe we should stand up against some of these people too, Maybe, Martin Luther King Jr. has a point. Now, historically, you will see that Martin Luther King Jr. was very unpopular at the time. A lot of people did not like what he was selling, but he started the movement towards people wanting to buy it. He started this idea that people said, you know what, I want to not live in a world of racist puppets. I would much rather live in a world, and it's not to say that people suddenly were enlightened or awoke, but you don't need people to be woke. You just need people to say, I don't want to be evil. I don't want to continue this evil narrative. And that is what occurred after World War II. And I think that if you did not have the Nazis to be an emblem of that, I don't think that either throughout Europe you have an anti-racist idea. You don't have an idea that decolonization is a good idea. I think in America you don't have a push to end Jim Crow. I think that without the Nazis, you don't get a more enlightened world, expressly because people have a hard time understanding things in small terms, but when it gets writ large, they go, oh, well, I can obviously see that's evil. So when they put on funny costumes, when they put on the black and silver costumes with the skulls all over them, you go, oh, that's the supervillain. I know that's the supervillain. And, just to make it a little bit contemporary right now, people who for years didn't really think twice about it, suddenly they look at Trump and go, oh, that's the supervillain. I get it now. That's the supervillain. Oh, I now see how that whole thing fits into the narrative as a negative. And it's unfortunate that it takes what it does.
Do you think if the Nazi Party hadn't happened, or if we prevented it before it happened, that sentiment would have found roots somewhere else and eventually done something? Because without it, would we know how bad it could get, and would we allow it to continue to get there until it's too late? I think it would have taken another Hitler to get us there. Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
exactly. We would have gotten another Hitler somewhere else, even if we did. So that's an interesting.
But if you get a Hitler in the 50s or the 60s, that's a lot of lives that are saved by getting them in the 40s. And I know that's that. And again, this is where it comes to that idea. It's not that they have to die; it's that they've already died. Is that when we look at history as something that has happened, then suddenly this idea of, well, I'll go back and I'll save all the people. It's like, yeah, I'd love to save all the people, but then what else happens as a result of that?
All right.
And if no one dies in the Holocaust, then Hitler becomes much less of a monster, and his ideas become all the more palatable to those around the world. And so, and in that way, yes, then you get another Hitler. Right away, you get that other Hitler, and that other Hitler then makes people wake up, a decade later. And perhaps because science and technology and whatnot else has progressed, now maybe it's a lot worse than it was the first time.
Right.
You have what you call the Fermi paradox, which is that basically the reason why you don't see a lot of star-faring civilizations is because most civilizations destroy themselves long before they get to the point where they can go out beyond where they're from.
Right.
And I think that's the idea here, is that, if a civilization allows itself to kill itself too quickly, or to try to mitigate the problems it needs to deal with, then those problems eventually do come to a head. So it's like, it's like you have a friend or a cousin or someone who has a substance abuse problem, and you keep on helping and you keep on helping, and it just increases the likelihood that when you have to stop helping, that things go much further off the rails for them. Now, that doesn't mean if you stopped helping earlier that they solved their problems earlier, but it's that the longer it continues without them being interested in solving their own problems, that the longer it's going to be a problem for them, and the bigger negative outcome they're going to deal with. So, yeah, we've talked almost nothing about this actual episode because there's so much philosophy going on in it,
Right.
One thing I'm kind of interested in seeing is if there's going to be an issue with May's soul later, and if that's going to lead to a return of the Ghost Rider. If it becomes a question of, did part of her leave, and what's left now we have to find a way to deal with, what does that mean? What does it mean for any of us to die and come back to life, And along those same lines, if May is basically just a rebooted May, her memories and history, but without, the emotional attachment to them, can she build herself a new self with its own new soul that is separate from what has passed before?
Right. Does she feel the same way about her memories as she used to? They're just movies in her head now. Does she react to them in the same way? Does she think she was right in those situations where she possibly wasn't? Or can she see herself objectively and think about her whole narrative?
Well, the idea is, and this is actually something that happened to Ms. Marvel, now Captain Marvel, in the comics, where she had her entire past erased, and then she eventually got it back, but when she got it back, it was just data points. It was just, she remembered her first kiss, but that was just, on, June 28th, I had my first kiss. And that was the whole of the memory.
Wow.
There wasn't anything deeper than that. Now, that said, she goes on and builds a new memory and a new life and a new history with just as much life and passion. Just because what once was is no longer bound to an emotional history doesn't mean that it can't build something new again. So that's that idea. And we'll see if they go that way. I love that, at the very end of this, after that, basically, Malik gets, long story short, Malik winds up meeting the mysterious stranger in the car, which again is one of these things where, that it is a mysterious stranger, that it is someone picking what seems to be a random nobody to be this connective tissue. It makes me wonder if there's someone else in the story that we're not going to see. As an interesting aspect of this, if we remember back to the framework, the idea of Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. being two sides of the same coin, and that people who were of S.H.I.E.L.D. were more than able to adapt their existences to a Hydra universe, is telling. That idea that, we want order, we want to move things forward, we want progress of the world and humanity, and what do we have to do to get humanity to that next level? So who the real founder of Hydra is going to be an interesting question, and I'm going to go out on a crazy limb right now and say maybe that's where Fitz is.
Yeah, it all does seem to be leading back to itself in some way, and that would be a really interesting loop they could create.
The idea that, history as an Ouroboros, meaning that basically, in order to maintain history, they have to create this line.
Maybe Fitz gets to a point.
Itself.
Right, maybe Fitz gets to a point where he realizes, he figures out, he's done something and Hydra doesn't exist anymore. They're like, but wait a second. But S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist anymore. And because S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't exist, I never get to meet my lady. So now, right? So now I have to create Hydra. And now that's how his soul becomes converted into the dark side.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on here, and I'm really excited about this last season. Next episode, we see, did you see the previews for next episode?
No, because on Hulu it didn't give it to me.
Oh, darn you, Hulu. Just on Channel 7. Do you not have a DVR?
No, but it's inconvenient to sit down at that time and sit and watch. I'm always doing stuff easier when it's on demand. It's just...
Yeah. I'll say this. If you go to ABC On Demand, you may have it a little easier.
Okay.
I don't know if you have cable in your house or not, or,
I do, but it's just you got to make time. You got to sit down at the right time if I'm doing something.
No. You probably have a DVR on your cable, man.
Oh, well, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I definitely.
This is 2020.
Yeah, I know, but it's also so easy. It's just on Hulu. I'm sitting right here. I put on my Xbox, put on the Hulu, and it's right there. It just requires.
Fair enough. But long story short, yes. So next episode, we get to meet Agent Sousa in the next episode. So that is, yeah. Peggy Carter's partner, they're going to say. And so we're going to see where that goes next. In the meantime,
the one final thing I want... Sorry, go ahead. I thought you were going to the end.
No, please, yeah. Final thoughts. What are your final thoughts, though, Mozz?
The one thing I really, really enjoyed was Koenig coming onto the ship and his complete mind-blastedness. How surprised he was and enthralled he was by everything, and how excited he was at seeing the robot. And it's so fun. Like, for people in our time frame, seeing a robot like that seems, come on, that can't be real. But to him, he knows so little about robots that it's a perfectly plausible thing to him that a robot would possibly look like a human and it would have perfect articulation and yada, yada, yada. I thought that was really, really fascinating.
Yeah, well, I thought that was, I got the feeling that there was very much an implication in that entire idea that, there is a world being built in that really, Koenig becomes, as you get to the end, becomes essentially central to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s formation, even though right now he is predating S.H.I.E.L.D. So where it goes is an interesting question as a totality. Yeah, as it stands, it's a really really interesting set of stories, and where it's going to go, I don't know. But
and one thing I wanted to point out was the guy playing Freddy. What a great actor that guy is.
Yeah.
Really subtle, really, it seemed genuine and honest, and his accent for a timepiecey accent to do, like old-timey New York, was very, very authentic sounding.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to see if I can see who Freddie Malik. Yeah, that is Darren Barnett.
Well played.
He was great at it. And what I liked how he is kind of a ragamuffin urchin through 90% of it, and then becomes, no, I am the one who knocks by the end of it, that you want me to be this ragamuffin urchin you can save. That's not who I am.
Well, I think also part of it might have been an act the whole time, because the moment he turns is when he realizes that they know the magic word. Because the word Hydra is like, oh, okay. I guess pretense is a foregone conclusion at this point. Time to get real. That's the other thing I thought was interesting. Yeah,
I mean, it was well done. I have to imagine we're going to see Mr. Barnett later. I mean, I know we're going to see Joe Stouffer, Enoch, and of course, definitely we'll be seeing more of Patton Oswalt. Because that's the thing about Enoch getting left behind. He's immortal. So it's like he's going to show up where they're next going to be, and he probably already knows they're going to be, in the 50s next.
Oh, wow, right.
At Groom Lake, and he's like, okay, I know that the next time window is this. I'll go over there and I'll wait for them. Because he also still has his walkie-talkie. So they're going to show up and he says, yes, yes, I've been waiting for you. I'm over here, and come meet me, and we'll discuss what the next step is. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that in the next episode. It's going to be great. Anyway, before we get to any final things, let me go talk about a couple things here, including our sponsors, which include Hunt a Killer, a delightful murder mystery puzzle game that you get to solve. If you are at all interested, go to the website huntakiller.com and learn about what the process of hunting a killer entails. If that is not something that interests you, what might interest you is just upgrading your headsets, because, we all listen to these podcasts on something, and we are probably listening to them on some kind of headset. And when it comes to a decent pair of headsets to wear, we here at Southgate Media like to endorse Tweaked Audio. Tweaked Audio, which will give you that sound quality that I know you're hoping to get. Now, if you're looking to buy Tweaked Audio headsets, you can do that by scrolling down in the show notes down to our little link there to Amazon.com. You click on our link to Amazon, you buy whatever the heck you want. You buy Tweaked Audio, you buy the box set of Peggy Carter, whatever makes you happy, you buy it, and it helps us out, and it costs you nothing, so why not do it? Additionally, while you're there, you can check out Pod Life the book, which is a book that the writers and artists here at Southgate Media have put together to tell the tale of why they podcast and what it means to them. So hopefully that's something you're interested in, and you can certainly check it out. And if anyone does, and they'd like to talk to us, Mozz, how could they talk to you?
Well, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, if you'd like to write to me in that old-fashioned email way the way our Mozz and Paz once said, do so at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. Of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet things, but not Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because it comes on at 10 at night, and I'm always falling asleep before then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to try again next week. Follow me at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieE. Yes, S-E-R. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Ding.
Thank you, Mozz. All right, ladies and gentlemen. You have listened to us once again discussing the unsung heroes of the world in which we live, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We hope that you have learned about what it means to be a hero, and I hope that in a week's time you return and listen to us again. Until then, we just say, 'Nuff said.
Enough said.